Good morning, Father's House. How are we doing today? Oh, there's like three of you that are awake. How are we doing today? Not yesterday. All right, a little bit better. I want to welcome everybody online, my Greece people up in Greece. I am so excited to be here with you this morning. My name is Jason. I get the awesome opportunity to be one of the community pastors here at the Father's House. It is exciting to be a part of a church that's growing and doing incredible things to reach the lost here in Rochester. You know, I just want to put in a plug for camp. I got the opportunity going to summer camps through my church all growing up, and they were absolutely pivotal moments in my life. And if I could petition you parents or grandparents or uncles or aunts, if you could just get the young one that you know signed up for camp, you have no idea the potential that having such a spiritual encounter with God and other people other young people that love God and are pursuing God could have in the life of somebody that you love. So I just want to put that plug in. I don't think I would be the same person if I hadn't had those pivotal experiences in my upbringing. You know, we're in the middle of this series called This Is Living Now, and last week Dennis started off with an incredible teaching on why love makes all the difference. And Dennis kind of walked us through this really interesting chapter in Romans chapter 12 and showed us step by step how when we choose to live sacrificial, loving lives, it makes this transformative impact. And if you weren't here last week, I would encourage you to go home, get on tfhny.org and watch that message. I watched it 4 times, and I tell you, I can't tell you how much I learned from that. It was absolutely pivotal in my life. So I hope that you have been enjoying this series. Today we're gonna take it one step farther, and we're gonna say we know that love can't operate in a vacuum, right? Like you can't just sit on a mountaintop, love yourself, and find fulfillment, right? Like love requires an object, love requires community, love requires relationships. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this idea of what does it mean to be truly living now in the context of the best possible relationships that we could be in. You know, my wife and I love adventure, and I think some of the most memorable This Is Living Now kind of moments have happened with my wife and I traveling. We love to explore the world, find new places, find new things, and whether it's going to the Finger Lakes and checking out a particular hike or whether it's traveling internationally, we've just had some moments that they resonate and we can remember every little detail. And you probably are the same way when you think about the things that are important in your life. But I can remember on our honeymoon, which was like 11 years ago, right now, 11 years ago today, we were sitting in Paris, and we were on the Champs-Élysées, and we were looking down at the Arc de Triomphe. We were eating a baguette. There were people milling around. It was incredible. And then this bird decided to foul our cafe table. And it's this like moment that just like is embedded in my mind. It was this combination of the beauty in the world, the incredible, I'm with my new bride, and then this thing happens, and it was like, it just cemented in my brain as a moment where like, for good or for worse, I felt fully alive. I can remember holding my girls when they were first born, and just like looking into their eyes and thinking, this is a moment that life is all about. You know, those moments are so incredible because we share them with other people. And when you think about the best moments in your life, you think about the best memories that you have, they involve relationships. They involve people that you can share those relationships with. Another thing that I love to do and makes me feel very alive is running. I love to go into the Black Creek trails or the different trail parks around here and just hit the dirt path and just run for as long as I can. I got a dog that goes with me. I love feeling the wind in my face, and every once in a while we'll come across like some deer or some squirrels. My dog will go crazy, just feeling alive. But by myself is not that exciting, but every once in a while, a buddy of mine, Jason Bear, some of you may know him, he's one of the link directors here at the Father's House, and he'll come running with me, and he'll bring his dog, and it's a totally different experience when you're with a buddy. And we're talking about life, we're talking about what we're learning in our relationships and at work, and we're talking about what God's doing in our lives, and we kind of come to these moments where we're like, this is what it means to be alive. This is just incredible. I may be exhausted, we can hardly breathe, but we keep talking because we just love the power of these incredible relationships. Speaking of running, there on the screen, I'm going to show a picture of a lady named Harriet Thompson. Last month, Harriet Thompson became the oldest person to ever start and complete a marathon. At age 92, Harriet Thompson finished a marathon in 7 hours. I couldn't finish a marathon in 7 hours. I would need a car to do that, I think. Yeah. You know what's fast? And if you think, oh, I could never do that, well, she didn't start till she was 76. So for almost everybody in this room, there's still time, okay? But you know what's interesting? Imagine if Harriet had decided she was going to do this, and she gets to the starting line. There's nobody there except like a robot that like says, you can begin. And then she begins to run the marathon, and nobody cheers her. Nobody's with her. She gets to the end. She crosses the line, and the robot tells her, you did it in 7 hours, and nobody's there. That would be a brutal moment, and she could have never done it. There's no way. What you see is a community, a group of people that were around her, pushing her, supporting her. The best moments require relationships. The best living now kind of experiences require that other people are with us. And this isn't a mystery. This isn't some like magical thing. This is the way that God designed human beings to exist. This is the way he designed us to live. John 10:10 says, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly. When Jesus is saying this, he's actually talking about you and I. The reason the God of the universe sent his son, Jesus Christ, to this earth was because he wanted us to know how we could have abundant life. He didn't come to judge us or condemn us or tell us we're horrible. He came and his story is about how you and I can experience the ideal, fulfilled, free, abundant life. And he doesn't hide it. It's not a mystery. If you have a Bible here and you could turn to Acts chapter 2, we're going to read a couple of verses about the very first Christians and the very first church and how they were able to begin to experience the abundant life. And this is like a blueprint or a step-by-step instruction manual for how we can experience this same kind of life. Now, as you're turning there, if you have a phone app you want to turn there, it will be on the screen, but I really encourage you, if you have a paper Bible, to get it out or pull it up on your phone so you can take some notes, because I think there's a couple of things in here, promises in here really, about how we can engage in that kind of life. But by way of background, the Roman culture was absolutely dedicated to this thing called dignitas. Dignitas was the overarching value of the entire empire of Rome. When we think about America, our overarching value is probably something like independence. But in Rome, the overarching value was dignitas. Dignitas was the sum total of your influence, your fame, your wealth, your status, your significance. And as you gathered more dignitas, you did it by stepping on other people, by pushing other people aside, by comparing yourself to somebody else and being better than them. And so Julius Caesar conquers Western Europe as a general, gathers all kinds of dignitas, comes back to Rome and elevates to the consulship because he had acquired the most dignitas. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, that's because our culture is actually not that different. Instead of dignitas, we would say, I'm climbing the corporate ladder and it's a dog-eat-dog world, so I got to get mine. That's the exact same culture that Rome was on. The difference is we kind of don't elevate it. We kind of talk about it as that's kind of the ugly side of our culture. But it's still a very real part of our culture. Now, these first Christians in the very first church had experienced the sacrificial love of God that Dennis talked about to us last week. And these first Christians decide to go a different route. They decide to not let dignitas be their governing value, but to let love be their governing value. So let's take a look, starting in verse 44, Acts chapter 2. And let's look at what these first Christians did. And you'll notice that they made 4 radical countercultural decisions. So here's verse 44. You could read along with me. That would be great. And all those who had believed were together and had all things in common. And they began selling their property and possessions and were sharing them with all, as anyone might have need. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple and breaking bread from house to house. They were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all people. And the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. There's these 4 radical countercultural decisions or actions that these first Christians chose to do. And I want to go back through and I want to look at them step by step. And then we're going to look at the result that they got. What was the impact in their lives as a result of choosing to go against the culture? Because it certainly was worth it. Verse 34, we see that they were, number one, first and foremost, they were united. Dignitas sought to divide society into stratification and social levels. But these first Christians, if we could put that verse back up on the board, says that they were together. They held all things in common. This is the exact opposite of what every other person in Rome or in the region would have been doing. Now, I think about a friend of mine, Patrick D'Ambrosio. Some of you may know him. He works in our kids' wing, incredible guy. We went to high school together. We sat side by side in English class, caused all kinds of havoc for our English teacher. Now we cause all kinds of havoc for our campus pastors, but that's a separate story. But Pat and I, we spent some high school time together. We moved to different areas. I came back, got married, bought a house right here near the Chilai campus. And a couple of years later, Pat got married. Pat moved to the same neighborhood as me. We live 10 doors apart. Our girls are growing up as best friends. It's this awesome opportunity to experience a great relationship. But there's a couple of other side benefits besides just being friends with him. And that is that if I need a tool, I don't have to go to Home Depot. If I need an extra egg or a flour, I don't have to go to Wegmans. And you may have some friends like that. So I just go down the road and get it. Now, I got thinking one day as we were exchanging like a fertilizer spreader for a siphon or something like that. I got thinking one day, wouldn't it be incredible if we had a big barn in the neighborhood and everybody could put all of their stuff in there and I didn't have to buy a $700 snowblower, right? Like we all have... In my neighborhood, it's like a big backyard. We all have riding lawnmowers. Like, wouldn't it make more sense to have a big barn and one big tractor and just to have it all in common? Like, that would make a lot more sense, but that's not our culture. And that wasn't the culture of the people in Rome at the time either. Their culture was that I got to have mine, and I'm going to step on you to get it. Verse 45 shows us that not only were they united, they were generous people. Not only did they share things, but look at this. It says they were selling their possessions and sharing with anyone in need. You know, in America, we are actually a very generous people. This is a way in which we are kind of different from the Roman Empire. We're a very generous people. We give billions of dollars all around the world in aid to people who have need. And even around us, we'll do things like, that whole give up a cup of coffee and, supply a meal to somebody in another part of the world. Or, we do these things that help us be generous. But we always are generous out of our excess. Like, I don't know anyone who sold their house and gave the money to a friend who needed surgery. I just don't know that story. Now, maybe that's a story somewhere, but I don't know that story. But that's the story here. It says that if somebody had need, everybody else decided they'd sell their stuff, not give an offering and take up excess. They would sell their stuff to meet that need. That's crazy. That's totally countercultural. So they were united. They were generous. Verse 46, they were clearly friends. They didn't just hang out once a week in the temple. It says day by day in the temple and in the homes. Like they liked each other so much that it wasn't enough to just see each other once a week. Like I have a lot of people that I come to church and I'm really excited to see them. It's like, hey, it's great to see you. But then I don't see them for 7 days. This group of people understood the sacrificial love of God so much that they're like, I cannot even imagine going a couple of days without seeing my people. Now, you might have some really close friends that you're like that, but imagine what it would be like if it was a whole community of people who said, it's not enough to just go to church and see these people once in a while and have surface-level relationships. I actually need to figure out a way to get connected to these people in the week. I need to have meals with them. I need to go out for coffee with them. I need to truly have them become an interdependent part of my life. That's what these people were experiencing. It seems like a lot to have daily interaction with the same people, but the impact that we're going to look at in just a second makes it clear that it was worth it. So they were united, they were generous, they were truly demonstrating friendship. And then in verse 46, they were hospitable. It says they were having their meals together in homes. Now, if you remember last week, Dennis taught us that hospitality is not having your family over for a meal. Hospitality is not having your best friend over for a meal in their family. Hospitality is having strangers or people that you don't know really well over for a meal. I don't know very often that this actually happens for us, but this is what they were doing. This certainly would have never happened in ancient Rome. But what I had an interesting experience a month ago. I was talking to somebody about a guy named Mark Falco. He sings once in a while up on the Chilai stage, and you'd probably recognize him, but I didn't know him. I never had a conversation with Mark before, and I was talking to somebody, and his name came up, and I said, I'd really like to get to know him and ask him a couple of questions. Seems like a really cool guy. And so I texted Mark. I got his number. I texted Mark, and I said, hey, Mark, I'd love to take you out for coffee sometime and just pick your brain about a few things. Mark texts me back in like 20 seconds, and Mark says, I'll do you one better. Why don't you and your family come over for dinner, and we'll have lots of food. He's Italian. He makes great food. And then we'll whatever your questions are, we'll talk. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, in my life, this has not happened. I have not had a stranger invite me over for dinner. I've not had that level of demonstration of hospitality. But we're driving over to the house on, I think it was this past Tuesday, and I say to Jenny, I'm like, I have no idea how this is going to go down. Like, this could end up being weird and creepy and crazy. Like, I don't know him. I don't know his family. But we got there, and 3 hours later, we left, our bellies sore from laughing, our stomachs full from incredible food. We developed an incredible relationship with Mark and his wife. And the coolest part about this story to me is I'm driving to Greece campus last night, and I hear this like fluttering sound in the back of my car, and I'm like, oh man, what the heck is that? And I'm driving on the highway, so I can't figure out what it is. And I get to the Greece campus, and I stop, and I turn around, and there's a piece of paper with a bunch of like colored pictures on it, and I pull it out, and it says, to Emma, love Rinna. Rinna is Mark's daughter. And I thought, if I never texted him and he'd never reached out and demonstrated hospitality to my family, we would never have had this relationship that we're developing. But the benefit my daughter is now getting because of watching her father demonstrate hospitality and my daughter being able to develop this relationship with Rinna. I just think that's such an incredible story. And I think that's just scratching the surface of what these first Christians in the first church were getting to experience. You know, all this sounds good, but it's kind of not normal. As you hear about it, you think, oh man, if we were to actually do that, that'd be weird. That'd be kind of crazy. But look at the result of doing this. Verse 46, it says, as a result of this, they were filled with gladness and sincerity of heart. Now, on the surface, those two words don't sound all that significant. But the word gladness is kind of an underrepresentation of what that word really means. I read a couple of commentaries on this, and they said a better translation, some translations say exceedingly joyful. Now, when I think about exceedingly joyful, I think about every day when I come home from work. This is true. I open the door, and the minute my daughters, Emma, who's sitting right over here, and Ruby, who's in the nursery, hear me, they come whatever corner of the house they're in. They come running, and I can hear how far they are by how loud they are. They yell, Daddy, 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 Daddy. And they get into the doorway, and they're just jumping up and down like this, like, Daddy, 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 Daddy. Like, they are exceedingly joyful. They can't contain themselves. And then, so I think I'm obviously, like, the best father in the world. I don't know if anybody, but then I realized, talking to some other guys, like this is what kids do. Like, I'm not just like the super dad. Like, this is what kids do. They are happy to see people. Like, we went to the zoo with a bunch of friends for the party in the park or party in the box this week, and, our kids didn't look at the animals. They just looked at each other, and they were, like, happy, exceedingly glad. Kids have this quality. Now, I hear that at 14, they all lose it. Now, I haven't been there yet, so don't wreck it for me, but I hear that they all lose it, and then, when we get older and we're not, like whatever's happening in the adolescent brain is now gone, we never recover it. We were created with an innate ability to love people, be exceedingly glad as a result of seeing them. But when I come to church and I see Chris, I'm like, hey, Chris. I see you, I'm like, what's up, John? I'm not like, Chris, come on, I want to see you. I mean, that's how I feel sometimes, but I don't do that because it's not culturally appropriate, right? Because somewhere along the line, we get that beaten out of us. The first Christians in the first church recaptured that because they were together, they were united, because they were generous, because they were truly friends, because they did whatever it took to let the love of Christ come forward. I think that would be incredible. They had gladness. They had sincerity of heart. Now, there is no word there in English to describe this Greek word. Now, I'm not going to try and press you with this word. I just looked it up in a Greek dictionary that I have on my phone. So you can get these little apps, and they'll tell you what the different words mean. So the word is aphiletos. And a means the opposite of. And phelos means to stub your toe. So, and you're going, well, how does that relate to anything? I can imagine Luke, the author of this book, saying, how on earth am I going to describe what's happening amongst the Christians? There is no example of this in culture. It's like they're exceedingly joyful. They're like, their world is large. It's like the opposite of when you get a stubbed toe and all you can think about is a little pain. Their experience of community, their experience of the abundant life that Christ came to give them was so large, the only way he could explain it was to go to the opposite when you stub your toe and you're like, oh my gosh, my toe hurts. Like your toe is the smallest thing in the world, right? Like there are people starving in other parts of the world. There are people in slavery in other parts of the world. There are people who have lost, and you know, when you get a stubbed toe, you're just so focused on that. The Roman culture was completely focused on a stubbed toe, not having enough dignitas or whatever it might be. And yet here we have the people of God having an enlarged world, so big that a little hurt didn't matter to them. A little hurt, they knew would be okay. They'd be taken care of by their crew, by their community. Verse 47, we find that they had gladness and sincerity of heart. Verse 47, they had favor. It says they had favor with all people. That means goodwill or the grace in community. That's what everyone in Rome was trying to get by stepping on everyone else to get dignitas. They got it without hurting anyone. They got it in greater measure because it wasn't just the Christians that looked favorably upon them. It says all people, everyone looked at them and said, something's going on there. They have something figured out. Verse 47, we find, this is incredible. It says, day by day, I've lost my spot here. The Lord was adding to their number day by day those who are being saved. The word saved means free from danger or destruction. So not only were they experiencing the protection and safety of this big group, but more people were looking at that going, that's pretty incredible. I want to be a part of it. Now, this makes me think about the Animal Planet, Nature Channel, when a bunch of lions are going after another animal, and it looks like that animal has no chance, right? In fact, there's this video on YouTube called The Battle of Kruger. It's a little grainy because it was shot on like an old school cell phone. I can't show it to you because it just looked like Tetris blocks moving across the screen. But you should look it up because on your phone it looks so cool. What happens in the Battle of Kruger is there's somebody on a boat and they're just filming these lions, and all of a sudden the lions like hunch down and they begin to crawl, and the camera pans over and there's a mama wildebeest and two little calf wildebeests, and the lions, you're like, uh-oh. Like, I wish that wildebeest knew this was coming. And the lions are crouching in, and then they all of a sudden take off like a rocket, and they get one of the calves. And the mama wildebeest like looking at it, and is like, I can't do anything, so she leaves. And I'm like, that's a crappy mom. Like, she should at least go down with the ship, right? Tackling the lions and whatever. But she leaves. And so these lions are like got their teeth into this little baby wildebeest, and it's like, you know, the sad but incredible nature thing. And then the camera pans back, and the lions are over here, and Mama Wildebeest comes back into the picture with like 60 of her crew, and they are not going to let the little calf go. And they come back, and it's like they get around, like they literally surround this herd of like 4 or 5 lions, and you can tell the wildebeest don't know what to do. They're like, we've never been in this situation before, but we're not going to let that happen. And then finally, one of the wildebeests, I think it was probably the mom, gets down with her horns, and she like gets into and under one of the lions, and she throws the lion into the air, and it just goes spinning like a rag doll. Absolutely incredible. And then the wildebeests get energy and excitement, and they go and they separate all of the lions. They get the little calf back, and all the crew go away with the wildebeest saved. That picture to me is the picture of what our lives can and should be like. There are dangers in this world. There are challenges in this world. There are struggles in this world. John 10:10 says to us, the thief, Satan, comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Another verse, 1 Peter 5:8, I think we have this one, says, can we get that one on the screen? Be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. He doesn't care who he devours. He just is going to kill people. He's just trying to wreck your life. He wants the exact opposite of what God wants for you. And so that picture of a lion getting its teeth into a wildebeest is what will happen to us if we don't have a crew, if we don't have people who are living Christ-centered relationships with us. And so I love that picture because it tells me that there's a chance that I can stand against the challenges and struggles and difficulties of this world if I'm standing with others. But you know, it doesn't matter how good you think you are. You don't have the capacity to stand against all the evil of the whole world. but together we do. You know, Satan wants to prevent you from having this is living now kind of moments. Satan does not want you to have what the first Christians had. Satan wants you to be lonely and isolated so that like a herd of lions, he can come in and destroy your life. And so what we have to figure out is how do we fight through that? And we have to understand what he does. Satan uses loneliness in a variety of ways. Like he doesn't just give you a lifetime subscription to Netflix and a whole bunch of popcorn and say, sit in your room. Like Satan is very crafty. I think one of the best things that he does is convince us that we need to pursue independence. Now don't get me wrong. The American value of independence is a fantastic value for a nation. It's a horrible value for an individual. Independence causes potential for destruction. Humans are not designed to be independent. Humans are designed to be interdependent. We're designed like the wildebeest to have a posse that can provide us protection and safety. Another thing that he does is convince us that we aren't secure enough to have relationships. We call it insecurity. He convinces us that, like, I don't like being rejected, so I'm just not going to ask anybody. You know, the solution to being lonely, to being isolated, is to ask other people to hang out with you. Will you have a cup of coffee with me? It's 7 words. And it's the scariest 7 words in the world because we're thinking, what if they say no? Like I've asked people before and like maybe we're all going back to middle school where nobody asked us to the prom or whatever it is. But the reality is the solution is right before us, and Satan convinces us, no, just go onto social media and like everybody and post everybody's comments and they'll like yours back and you'll have a relationship. And there's nothing wrong with that because connecting is good, but it's not a substitute for relationship. That, imagine if the wildebeest was like, my daughter is getting killed, and everybody else is like, do I like that? It's like there's no solution there. Like it's just declaring the reality. Sometimes we declare what's not real. Loneliness, in particular with social media, is really interesting. Facebook. There was a recent study done on Facebook, and it said, Zen, and you can start playing if you want. It said there's an inverse relationship between how much time we spend on Facebook each day and how happy we are throughout the day. Now, that's an interesting thing. The more time on Facebook, the less happy we are. Scientifically proven. The less time on Facebook, the more happy we are. That's crazy. Because I don't know, a lot of us I spend a lot of time on social media. My wife has this really awesome rule about herself. She's got incredible discipline, way more discipline than I do. She will only look at her Facebook feed at night after everything else is done for the day. Can't wreck your day if you only look at it at night. Can wreck your sleep, but it can't wreck your day, right? I think that's really, really incredible. You might say, what's the big deal? I'm not lonely. 40% of the American adult population has all the indicators to be clinically diagnosed with loneliness. Now, before you say, well, that's not a big deal, loneliness, the current health study on loneliness is insane. Okay? As I was studying this, University of Chicago just put out a study that said loneliness can decrease sleep quality, and by measuring somebody's loneliness today, this is a quote right out of the study, how lonely you are today allows us to accurately predict your sleep and depression levels in 1 year. Being lonely right now has ramifications for the future. Listen to this one. This is another study. Loneliness can lead to an early death. You're 2 times as likely to die early from impaired immune function, increased inflammation, even potentially lead to type 2 diabetes and heart disease if you allow loneliness to be in your life. This isn't Christian studies. This is real scientific studies. The summary of all of the research one author put is that most psychologists suggest that loneliness is rapidly becoming one of the leading health issues in America. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And if he shows up with a red hat and a pitchfork, you go, oh, that's Satan. I'm not going to go for that. He shows up in loneliness. He shows up in insecurity. He shows up in addiction to social media, and all of a sudden we don't see it. And we head right down into this horrible situation. There's this DJ from Sweden that wrote a song. His name's Alesso, and I'm not endorsing him. I don't know all his music, but this one song has this line, and he says, everyday people do everyday things, but I can't be one of them. And I don't want to live a mediocre life. I don't want to live a life that leaves me open to what Satan's attacks could be. I want to live a full, vibrant, abundant life that God planned for me. Romans 5:8 says, and Josh quoted this earlier when he was on stage, that God demonstrated his own love towards us in this, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. That word love is agape, sacrificial love. It's the same word that Dennis taught us about in Romans 12. That there is a sacrificial love that was shown to us, demonstrated to us. It was like, this is how it can be. And as Dennis taught us, when we engage it, love makes all the difference. If we want to have a full and abundant life, we have to choose sacrificial love. We have to choose relationships that are centered on Christ. And if we do that, it makes all the difference. Love makes all the difference is an incredible statement, but it means nothing if we don't actually employ it. So I want to encourage you today that there are actually only two types of people in this world. There are only two types of people in this room. You're either lonely or you're not lonely. And if you're lonely, your next step is to ask people to be in relationship with you. If you're not lonely, your next step is to ask people to be in relationship with you. Because the reality is, if you're lonely, you need relationships. If you've got relationships, they're not for you, and they will only be as good as your ability to continue to increase the amount of people that experience what you experience. And here's the incredible thing. Nobody's going to know when you say, will you go out for coffee with me, whether you're the lonely person or the not lonely person. It's the same next step. Now look at the person on your left. Look at the person on your right. One of them's lonely, like clinically lonely. And if it's not them, it's you. So ask somebody out for coffee. Begin the process of developing Christ-centered relationships based on sacrificial love, and we get what the Bible promises, abundant life. We get glad and sincere hearts. We get the status and favor of all because we're people who love and are inclusive. We get this incredible protection that comes from living in community. So we've done this party in the box thing just as a tool to say, hey, do you want to get together and hang out and do something crazy? All kinds of ideas. There's a picture on the screen they're going to put up of my party in the box that I threw last week on the on the Greece stage. I was doing announcements and I held up the blue theme one and I said, my family's going to go to the zoo. And I want to just say right now, anyone that wants to come, lonely or not lonely, come to the zoo Friday morning if you got kids and you're available. Would love to. I'll be in Guest Central, and I'd love to connect with you and just go to the zoo together and get to know each other. I went to Guest Central, and not a single person came up and said, I want to hang out with you. And I'm like, oh, crap, nobody likes me. I'm supposed to speak next week. Nobody's going to come back. So I tried it again the next service. I went to Guest Central. Nobody came and talked to me. I tried it a third service. Nobody came and talked to me. Now, I could have been like insecure and be like, oh, well, nobody likes me. I was like, you know what? Forget this. I'm going to go to the kids wing where all the parents are that have kids and start asking people to go to the zoo with me. Can we put that picture back up? And these are the people that were in the kids wing. And some of my friends. But a lot of people in that picture I didn't really know that well. Or like I see them around church, but I don't have a relationship with them. And now I have 20 friends. And I want to do more of these kinds of things. And I, maybe it's not the zoo for you, but we got all kinds of ideas. Take a risk and engage in community. And nobody's going to know whether you're the lonely or the not lonely one. They're just going to be thankful that someone cared enough to begin to live the way that the first Christians lived, to begin to engage in the abundant life. Living in Christ-centered relationships is the key to experiencing abundant life. There is no other solution. That's the way God designed it. So I challenge you today, throw a party in the box. I challenge you today to choose, like those first Christians did, to engage in community. I challenge you today to be able to say, this is living now. Let's pray. God, I thank you that you're a good God. I thank you that you didn't come to this earth to condemn us. I thank you that you didn't come to this earth to tell us that we suck. I thank you that you didn't come to this earth to make our lives difficult. I thank you that you came to this earth so that we could experience abundant life. Father, I know many people in this room are not experiencing abundant life. Father, I know that I have the tendency to not experience abundant life because of insecurity, because of this ridiculous desire to be independent and supposedly free. But Lord, I just ask a blessing of freedom and fulfillment over everybody in this room, that they would have the courage to choose Christ-centered relationships, that they would have courage to choose sacrificial love, to follow your plan and engage in the abundant life that you designed for every one of us to live. I ask this in your name, amen.